Picture this. You open up a dating app or, maybe a text thread on your phone, and you are really hoping for a spark. You want to see that notification, feel that little rush of adrenaline, and just know the feeling is mutual, right?
Oh, absolutely. We all want that mutual energy.
Right. But instead, you look at the screen, you scroll up slightly, and you just see a graveyard. I mean, it's just a sequence of painfully low-effort replies like, haha, yeah, or lol. Same.
Yeah, that is a uniquely modern kind of disappointment. You're basically just watching the momentum evaporate in slow motion.
It really is. It's honestly like looking at a houseplant that you completely forgot about. The conversation didn't die in some dramatic fire. There was no big argument. It just slowly, quietly withered because nobody was watering it.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
And if you're listening right now, you know exactly what that feels like. You sit there wondering if you did something wrong, or if they're just busy, or if you need to perform some kind of conversational CPR. So today, your mission in this modern connection lab deep dive is to figure out exactly why these texts go cold.
And far more importantly, we're going to equip you with the actual tools to restart those conversations. And we're going to do it without sounding desperate, without being passive-aggressive, and without acting like some overly strategic chess player.
Yeah, because we don't want any of that.
Exactly. We are establishing a baseline of dating confidence here that does not rely on games. So leaving behind the manipulation, the pickup artist tactics, the whole weird idea of trying to make someone obsessed with you, the goal here is just clear, modern, self-respecting communication.
Love that. But before we can cure the dead text thread, we kind of have to look at the autopsy. It's like we have to understand what actually killed the momentum in the first place, right?
Yeah. Right. And when you look closely at the mechanics of digital communication, texts generally go cold for one of four very logical reasons. And the first one is what we call conversational friction.
Fiction. Okay, meaning like the actual effort it takes to keep the dialogue moving.
Yes, specifically the cognitive load you are placing on the other person. So think about it. If you send a message asking for their entire life philosophy on a Tuesday afternoon.
Which is a lot for a Tuesday.
It is a lot. Or if you ask a question so broad that it basically requires a 3-paragraph response, you are creating massive friction. If they read that text while they're, I don't know, holding groceries and waiting in line for coffee, their brain simply doesn't have the bandwidth.
So they just swipe it away.
Exactly. They put their phone away thinking, I'll answer that, so I don't have time.
And then later never comes because life just keeps happening.
So you're saying that by asking a big open-ended question, I'm essentially handing them a blank essay prompt.
Basically, yes. Yeah. Like their brain has to do the heavy lifting of figuring out what part of their day is even interesting enough to share.
That's a really great way to visualize it. You want to hand them a multiple-choice question, not a blank essay. Which actually brings us to the second reason texts stall out, and that is the lack of an anchor.
Oh, let me guess. This is what happens when you try to avoid the essay prompt by swinging way too far in the opposite direction, just sending something completely devoid of substance.
You nailed it. If you send a generic message like, so, or how's your day, you are giving the other person absolutely nothing to grab onto. An anchor is a specific detail that grounds the conversation.
Got it.
Without an anchor, opening your text is like walking into an empty room. The other person looks around, sees a blank slate, feels this weird pressure to invent a topic out of thin air, and they just close the app.
Oh, man, it's like walking up to someone at a party and just staring at them until they think of something entertaining to say. It's deeply uncomfortable.
It really is. Now, the third reason is slightly different. We call it the performance shift.
Performance shift. What does that mean?
This happens when the energy of the conversation suddenly morphs from a genuine, vulnerable connection into a performance. So one person decides they need to act mysterious or overly clever or intentionally unavailable. They stop being a human being and they start playing a character.
Yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving end of that sudden shift to cool and aloof. You can feel it instantly. The warmth just drops completely out of the thread, and suddenly you feel like you're being evaluated rather than conversing.
Yeah.
It completely kills the desire to reply.
Because it demands that you start performing, too. Nobody wants to do that on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
And then the fourth reason is the simplest, though honestly it can be the hardest to swallow. They simply might not be available, or they might not be interested. Sometimes people are just overwhelmed with work, or they are just moving in a different direction.
Okay, well, let me push back on that for a second. Because if you're the listener sitting there staring at a haha yeah text or a read receipt with no reply, that natural anxiety kicks in. Let's be real. Isn't a cold text basically a silent rejection? Shouldn't we just, take the hint, pack up our pride, and walk away entirely?
Look, it is entirely normal that our brains jump straight to rejection. We are fundamentally wired to fear social exclusion. But we really need a mindset shift here. You cannot treat a cold text like an emergency. It is not an automatic rejection. It is simply information.
Information. Just data about the current temperature of the interaction.
Right. It could be stress at work. It could just be bad timing. It could be that the houseplant ran out of water because of friction or a lack of an anchor, like we just talked about. When a text goes cold, it's just a signal telling you where the momentum currently sits.
That is surprisingly reassuring.
It should be. And that leads us to the golden rule of restarting a thread. You can make it easy to respond once, but you do not need to make it impossible to ignore you.
I want the listener to really hear that. I can make it easy to respond once, but I do not need to make it impossible to ignore me. That completely shifts the power dynamic back to a healthy place. You're opening a door, you are not setting a trap.
Exactly. But if we want to successfully open that door and make it easy for someone to respond, we have to stop relying on our lazy defaults.
Okay, I have a confession to make here. I have definitely leaned on the wide text. What are you doing? It just feels incredibly safe. I'm not putting myself out there. I'm not risking a big rejection. I'm basically just casually tossing a pebble at their window.
I get it. It feels safe for you. But consider what it feels like for them. Words like hey and wide are not inherently evil, but they are incredibly low information. If someone is already your long-term partner, hey is fine.
Right, because you already have context.
Exactly. But if you are in early dating and the conversation has cooled down, sending hey is asking the other person to carry the entire burden of rebuilding the context.
So I'm basically making them do all the heavy lifting to resurrect the plant.
Yeah.
I drop a hey, and now they have to figure out the topic, the tone, the direction. That's exhausting.
It is. And wide can actually feel a bit demanding. It comes across like you want their attention right now, but you aren't willing to offer any value or direction to the interaction.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
This is why we need a better mechanism to restart things. And the most effective approach is a three-part framework: acknowledge, anchor, invite.
The AAI framework. Okay, let's unpack this because this feels like the ultimate antidote to that blank essay prompt we talked about.
It is. So the first step is acknowledge. You briefly call out the pause in the conversation, but you do it entirely without guilt.
So you're not saying, wow, nice of you to finally look at your phone.
No, definitely not.
You say something light that just clears the air, like, hey, this conversation totally got buried. Or, I realized I vanished from this thread for a bit.
Perfect. You are normalizing the pause so neither of you feels awkward about it. Then comes the second step. Anchor. This is where you solve the blank slate problem. You bring up a specific detail from your previous interactions.
Like what kind of detail?
It could be something from their profile, a joke from your date, or literally just a random observation they made before the thread went cold.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If I pull a tiny detail from a conversation we had, like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
maybe the fact that they fiercely defended a specific indie movie or that their dog refuses to walk in the rain, am I going to look like I've been obsessing over them?
Yeah.
Doesn't that look a bit like stalking?
That is a very common fear, but specificity is actually the hallmark of good communication. It shows you were present and listening. As long as you are pulling a detail from a shared interaction and not, digging up their high school track records from Google.
Right, keep it out of the creepy zone.
Exactly. An anchor feels validating. People genuinely love to feel heard.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
You're basically just creating a shared reality. And then the final step is invite. You give them a simple, low-pressure way to respond.
Right. You lower the friction. Instead of demanding a massive life update, you ask a simple question based on your anchor. Like, are you still defending that movie's ending? Or did the dog survive the rainstorm?
Okay, before we put this AAI framework to the test, I think the listener needs a quick public service announcement on what not to do. Because the instinct to panic when a text goes cold leads to some truly terrible decisions.
Oh, the pitfalls are very real. And they usually stem from trying to manage our own anxiety rather than actually connecting with the other person.
Let's run through them. First on the list, do not guilt trip.
Ever.
Sending, wow, you vanished, or guess I'm not interesting enough, is agonizing to read. It makes the other person feel obligated, not excited.
Absolutely.
Second, avoid passive-aggressive humor. The whole blink twice if you're alive text is not charming. It's just annoying.
Passive aggression instantly puts the other person on the defensive. When someone feels defensive, their brain is literally managing a threat. They are no longer in a state where they can build rapport with you.
So true. Third, no jealousy games. Don't vaguely mention other dates you're going on to try and spark a reaction. Fourth, and I literally beg the listener to hear this, do not do the fake accidental test.
Oh, please don't.
Pretending you meant to send a message to a friend just to get your crush's attention is so transparent, we can always see right through it.
It compromises your authenticity immediately. Just don't do it.
Fifth, avoid over-explaining. If you've only been chatting for a week, you do not need to send a 3-paragraph essay about your communication needs. Sixth, drop the interrogation mode. Firing off 6 questions in a row feels like a job interview.
It's way too much friction.
Exactly. And finally, stop playing strategic waiting games. Waiting exactly 3 days to text someone back because you think manufactured distance looks like confidence is a delusion.
Manufactured distance just breeds anxiety. Timing certainly matters in communication, but playing games with the clock is an attempt to control the other person rather than actually connecting with them.
All right, let's put on our lab coats. We have the theory, now we really need practical application. Welcome to the Text Doctor segment. I'm going to bring you a sick, dying text, and we are going to diagnose why it fails psychologically and then use the AAI framework to make it healthy.
I have my clipboard ready. Let's open the clinic.
Let's do it. Case number 1, the dating app conversation went cold a few days ago. The patient's sick text is just a simple, hey, I feel like we already know the diagnosis here. It's the blank essay prompt.
Definitely. It suffers from low information and high burden. So let's apply. Acknowledge, anchor, invite. A much healthier version would be, picking this back up because your Sunday market comment stuck with me. What's your ideal low-pressure Sunday? Coffee first or food stall first?
See, I look at that and immediately know how to answer. You acknowledge the return without making it weird by just saying, picking this back up. The anchor is highly specific, the Sunday market. And the invite is literally a multiple choice between 2 things, coffee or food stall. The cognitive friction is virtually 0.
Case 1 is cured. What is next?
Case 2, you are having some really fun, playful banter in their DMs, and then they just went quiet. The sick text is, guess you disappeared. Or maybe, so did I scare you away? Now, I have to admit, I can see why people send this. It feels like a playful tease. Why does this backfire?
Look at the underlying mechanic of those phrases. Even if your tone is meant to be playful, did I scare you away, is an accusation. It puts the person on trial.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Now they have to reassure you that they didn't disappear and that you aren't scary. You have turned a fun dynamic into a chore.
You're forcing them to manage your insecurities instead of just having a conversation.
That's a great point. Let's fix it. A healthier version. This thread got buried, but I wanted to come back to your controversial movie opinion. Are you still defending that ending?
That is brilliant. You blame the algorithm, this thread got buried, it completely removes any accusation, and then you bring back the fun, debating energy without any passive aggression. Okay, case 3. You just went on a first date, it seemed good, but the communication slowed down the next day. The sick text. Did you have fun or not?
That text just reeks of needing validation. It is incredibly high pressure. It demands a definitive verdict on the date before the dust has even settled.
It's like asking for a Yelp review of the date.
Exactly. A more secure approach looks like this. I had a good time last night. The tiny restaurant with the dramatic lighting was a solid choice. I'd be up for round 2 sometime this week if you are.
Oh, I love the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
You were stating your own feelings first. I had a good time. Which shows real vulnerability. You anchor it to the specific lighting at the restaurant, proving you were paying attention, and the invite is clear, but totally unpressured. I'd be up for round 2.
Yay.
If you are.
It gives them a very clear, brightly lit door to walk through, or a comfortable way to politely decline if they aren't feeling it.
Okay, case 4 is tricky. They actually replied to you, but it was really late, and they apologized for the delay. The sick text response is, no worries, I'm used to being ignored.
This raises a massive point about how we punish people when we are hurting. That sick text is actively punishing them for apologizing. If you make someone feel guilty the exact moment they return to a conversation, you are training them to avoid you in the future.
Because you've associated their return with negative emotions. That makes so much sense. So what's the healthy alternative?
All good. Life happens. Your hiking story still needs a second chapter, though. Did the group survive the trail?
That's so smooth. You accept the apology gracefully by saying life happens, and you immediately pivot back to an anchor. That way the conversation doesn't just awkwardly stall out on them saying sorry and you saying it's okay. You keep the momentum moving forward.
Exactly. Let's do one more.
Final case in the clinic. Case 5. You want to ask them out, but the thread has been cold for a few days. The sick text. Are we ever actually going to meet, or is this just another dead app conversation?
Again, we are taking our internal frustration and weaponizing it into pressure. It's a combative, adversarial way to ask someone out. The healthier alternative is, I'm enjoying this, and I think it might be easier in real life. Want to grab coffee this week and continue the debate? No pressure either way.
It's warm, it's direct. I'm enjoying this. It frames the invitation as continuing a good thing, rather than fixing a broken thing.
Exactly.
So if you're the listener, let's say you've drafted your text, you've applied the AI framework. How do you know for sure it's a healthy text before you hit send?
This is where we bring in a very practical tool called the dating lab test. It is a simple filter you apply to your own drafts. Before you send any text to restart a conversation, look at the screen and ask yourself one question. Does this text give the other person something easy to respond to?
Just that one question.
Yes, because it cuts right to the core of cognitive friction. If the answer is yes, it means you have built a good anchor and a low-friction invite. If the answer is no, it usually means your text is too vague, too heavy, or it is secretly just a bid to get them to soothe your anxiety.
Okay, let's play this out to its logical conclusion. You pass the dating lab test. You use acknowledge, anchor, invite. You send a beautiful, specific, low-pressure text, and then crickets. Complete silence. What happens next?
This brings us to the ultimate boundary in digital communication. We call it the one clean follow-up rule. This is arguably the most vital piece of the entire framework. You send one thoughtful follow-up using AI. If they do not respond to that message, you stop. Period.
Wait, I stop entirely. What if I wait another week and try a totally different anchor? Or, what if I just send a funny meme to see if that gets a laugh?
No double texting, no meme campaigns. And we don't do this to protect our pride or to play hard to get. We do this for emotional clarity. Remember, humans hate unresolved loops. When someone doesn't text us back, it opens a loop in our brain, and that causes anxiety.
Oh, for sure.
We often send a second or third text not because we actually want to connect, but because we are desperately trying to close that anxious loop.
Wow. That is profound. We are texting to soothe our own nervous system, not to talk to them.
Precisely. A clean follow-up is an act of deep confidence. Repeatedly trying to revive a thread that will not wake up just turns into pressure, and it fundamentally erodes your own self-respect. You're basically trying to earn basic acknowledgement.
It goes back to that idea earlier that a cold text is just information. If you send a perfect, easy-to-answer text and they still don't answer, well, you just got your data.
You built a very easy open door. If they choose not to walk through it, you have your answer. And for the listener, there are other clear signs that it's time to walk away, even if they are technically replying.
Right, like if they are consistently giving you one-word replies and never ever asking a question back, you're basically conducting an interview at that point. Or if they dodge every single attempt you make to set up a real-world plan.
Or, and I think this is the most important metric, if you sit there and realize you feel like you are performing just to keep their attention. If looking at the text thread makes you feel anxious and on edge rather than curious and relaxed, it is time to stop watering the dead houseplant.
Let it go.
Yeah.
So when we look at the big picture of this deep dive, redefining what confidence without games actually looks like over text, it's a complete paradigm shift. Confidence isn't acting aloof. It isn't pretending you don't care if they live or die.
Not at all.
True texting confidence is being clear enough to actually show your interest. It's being calm enough not to demand an immediate response. It's being specific enough to make replying easy. And, most importantly, it's being self-respecting enough to stop when the energy clearly isn't mutual.
It takes so much of the exhaustion out of the dating process when you finally realize you only control your side of the screen. You offer the invitation. You do not control the RSVP.
Let's do a quick rundown to lock this in for everyone listening. Give me the 5-point recap of the Modern Connection Lab protocol.
All right, number 1, cold texts are not always rejection. They're simply information. Treat them as data, not an emergency. Number 2, when you decide to restart, use the framework, acknowledge the pause without guilt, anchor to a specific detail, and invite a low-pressure response.
Perfect.
Number 3, specific beats generic every single time.
Goodbye forever.
Exactly. Number 4, rely on the one clean follow-up rule. Send one thoughtful text, not a relentless campaign. And number 5, true confidence means being clear, warm, and willing to stop when the energy is not mutual.
I want to hear from you, the listener, right now. Down in the comments, tell us which of these texting situations feels the absolute hardest for you to navigate in your own dating life. Type 1 if your biggest struggle is opening a conversation again after silence. Type 2 if it's keeping the conversation alive once it actually starts. Type 3 if your biggest hurdle is transitioning from texting to actually asking them out. Or Type 4 if you struggle most with knowing when to just stop and walk away. Drop your number below.
And I will leave you with this final thought to mull over as you look at your own text threads today. We place an enormous amount of weight on these little blue and green bubbles. But if a text thread is ultimately just a tiny digital bridge meant to get two people into the real world, why do we let the traffic on that bridge dictate our entire self-worth? If the bridge is closed, don't stand there yelling at the barricade, just take a different route.
The houseplant is just a houseplant, right? It isn't a reflection of your soul. Next time on our Modern Connection Lab Deep Dive, we are tackling episode 03. How to show interest without seeming too intense. We'll explore how to make your feelings clear without overwhelming the other person, without over-explaining yourself, and without resorting to pretending you're totally unavailable. Until then, keep your text specific, keep your friction low, and keep your confidence high.